Hi everyone, my name is John. Welcome back to my channel. I have another book review for you today, book discussion. Read this in February for the first quarter of Historathon, where we read about anything and everything nonfiction history from Plank time to 500 AD. So everything as far as you want to go back, all the way up to 500 AD. And I read this, an author I'd never read before, and about a subject which I don't know too much about. I mean, most of ancient Greece is centered around, books about ancient Greece at least, are centered around Athens. So I picked this up in the hopes of learning a little bit more. This is The Spartans, The World of the Warrior Heroes of Ancient Greece by Paul Cartledge. If you're an avid consumer, listener of podcasts or documentaries about ancient Greece, especially Melvin Bragg's In Our Time, which comes out of the BBC, which he's been on numerous times and which I love. Not necessarily when Paul Cartledge is on, but I love In Our Time. You're no doubt familiar with Paul Cartledge's sort of breathless excitement when he talks about his subjects. Ancient Greece, Sparta, the Greek city-states. His passion is always apparent, but on hearing him, you quickly realize that he's not the best popularizer. And The Spartans is certainly not meant to be a popular treatment of his subject, even though you would think from the subtitle that you're basically getting a popular introduction here. I'm arguing with myself as I wrote the review to whether I even want to mention what the book says as far as content goes. And I probably would have if he would have presented ideas in a more cogent, straightforward, linear way. But unfortunately, the book doesn't really do that. I'm pretty generous with my time when it comes to giving a book several chances, but this was just a big disappointment on many levels. So I'm going to do something I almost never do in book discussions or book reviews, if you will, and just talk a little bit about why I thought it was bad and why you can probably do better, even though I don't have any recommendations for you about Sparta specifically. Though, if you ask me, I know where to send you. Paul Cartledge's tone can verge on the defensive. Instead of laying out an historical position when it's necessary, he often presents defenses of his pet interpretations of minor disputes and figures, which always detract from what little narrative thread the book actually manages to maintain and hold. And when I say minor, I mean they're minor. They're not meant to be in a book that is a 275-page introduction to a subject. If you have 3 or 4 books about Sparta under your belt, then they might be more interesting. But when you get into the weeds about certain rulers, certain families, it just seems like he is an overly enthusiastic professor, which he is. He is an overly enthusiastic professor, getting into details when what you're doing is you're supposed to be teaching Sparta 101, and you're teaching graduate school Sparta. If that makes any sense. Hopefully that's a good analogy. Of course, these minor disputes mean nothing to the target audience who is looking for an introduction, who is looking for a broad overview, not Paul Cartledge's granular pet takes on ancient Spartan history. Laconic narrative jumps often bring him outside of his timeline that he's discussing and are sometimes fuel for his, like I said, weirdly defensive asides about what he thinks was going on. I'm sure that Paul Cartledge excels when he's talking with other archaeologists, other professional and academic historians, but this book is very much in need of a talented editor and a narrative through line, for that matter. And preferably an author who's aware of what an audience wants from a book that claims to be a general introduction to the Spartan world. There is no doubt that he can write books like this with his eyes closed. No doubt at all. And it appears that he may have done exactly that. It's a little bit harsh, but I don't know if this was just an attempt to capitalize off of a public that was marginally curious to learn a little bit more after seeing films like Troy or 300, even though both of those came out shortly after this did. I can only guess. Whatever it is and why it was published and why it didn't get a better editor, I don't know. But I think it could have been something that was really good, or at least better than it was. And this is just not it. If you know about another book that can give me some insight into the Spartans that you like, please let me know. I'm always especially when I didn't like a book, I obviously read it because I wanted a good introduction. You can find stuff about classical Athens up the wazoo, right? But stuff about approachable, introductory stuff about particular city-states that are not Athens aren't exactly easy to come by. So if you have one in mind, please let me know. Do me a favor. I'd really appreciate it. This is The Spartans, The World of the Warrior Heroes of Ancient Greece by Paul Cartledge. He is fun to listen to on In Our Time, but on the page, his presence is just, yeah, not for beginners. That's all I really wanted to say. I'll see you soon with another book review. Bye.